Okay, another tip for today, and this is going to be about JMRI operations. Location. We had a question come up about interchange. They called it, the individual said junction, but basically we're talking about interchange and so forth. Overall location, I have a junction on this railroad. Overall layout location, and this is Apex East. The overall location here is Apex. This is Apex East, and it's got 1, 2, 3, and each one of these 3, and actually 4, and each one of those 4 have 2 spurs, because we work cars, and this comes from my old days in the beer industry. We had plates, and we could go through cars to the next track to unload them. So we have 2 tracks here, and the idea is that the forklift runs through one car across a plate into the next car, so you have more cars ready to unload. Now, it also gets into trying to get your operators to understand what goes on and properly spot cars. The tank cars in the end, we don't have the fence around it, and we're missing the things unloaded and the pipes to go over to the storage rigs. But that's the gasoline, diesel fuel unloading area for fuelish. Well, I think we're going to call this one Bro Petroleum. Yeah, this is Bro Petroleum. Long story there. Okay. But anyway, these are 3, 4, actually works out, that's 8 spur tracks right there. Now this is a yard, and this is a true yard, since some of y'all know the games I play. This is set up in JMRI, this 4 tracks right here is set up as a true yard. Okay? It's, by the way, going back here is actually 9 spurs. I forgot the one here for the food grade oil for Kraft Foods, you know, so it's 9 spurs. So this is a location. It has spurs and it has a JMR true yard. So when a car comes in this yard or goes out of this yard, the loads do not flip. This yard, basically, as far as I know, I'd have to go look. I can't imagine anything that wouldn't go through here. This yard handles any car that's on the railroad. Even though it may not have a spur that takes a car out of this yard and puts it on the spur at Apex, this yard is also the end of the line for, back here, this back track is the Apex Silverville branch line, which comes over here and in the intermediate stop services Apex Industrial. So there may be, whereas there's no ethanol cars at Apex, the branch line train picks up and sets out cars for the manifest freights in this yard. So it's got to accept everything. And there's, you know, good combination here. So, you know, we have a depot. Now, the engine's sitting here. We're going to stop here for a second, and I'm going to go get back the engines up over to where the interchange track is, and show you that. So these are just more spurs. There's 2 here at Grande Pacific Freight Station. The one on the back tracks, you can put 4 cars there, and then you have the one here in the front, which is 2. And then you have Formosan Foods, which only takes 1 car, but it's at the end of the spur track here. And you have to think about that, because that's a facing switch right here. So when you go to put that car in there and you're working this, you got to think about this. You know, which engine do you want those cars on? So the grain elevator, the liquor distributor, Pillsbury, Dependable Auto Parts, Ready Cement. Okay, now this is the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe interchange. It's this track leading to those cars. Now, okay, so they're hidden in the tunnel. On this railroad, the reality of that track is it's the cheater track for the second level to make it a continuous loop. It goes out behind the helix back there and it comes out over there. So if I have guests over and you just want to run trains in a loop, that's the track that accomplishes that. So for an operating session, it does not get used. Okay, no cheating during operating session. You've got to run all the way from one end of the division to the other end of the division. There's no shortcuts allowed. So we have this set up to where I think you can get about 10 or 11 cars, depending on car lengths. There's an allocated space up in there. All reality, you could probably put 30 cars in there if you wanted to. There is one switch doesn't get used during the operating session in the back there. It goes to the rip track and the workbench, but we won't get into that. So yeah, anyway, it's got about 10 cars. Now I'm going to go pull the cars out and we'll get into exactly how the interchange gets serviced. Okay, so now we took the road engines, went over here, and we're pulling the cars that are on the interchange out. Okay, so that's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cars that are on the interchange. All right, now if I went into JMRI and pull this out, there's and pull this train out, it would be Apex yard switch job. There's an Apex local and an Apex yard job. And when I print the Apex yard job out, what it will do is it will select a number of cars to take out of that yard there. It only has two places it goes. It goes to a Spur, or you can actually, there's a position, you can call this an interchange. Or you put it in as, it goes to the interchange track, ATSF interchange track, and it goes to the depot track right here behind the station. It services those two places, so when you start the train out, it takes cars from the yard. It will come over here and it will, if it decides to do it, and it may not, it's random, so it may pick up cars from the yard, and it will pick up cars from here. Then you have to go over here, and it will tell you which cars to take out of these 7 cars and which cars to leave. Okay? Now, here's the part where you have to let the imagination handle the rest of it. So presumably that track that goes into that tunnel on the other end has a connection to the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. And the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad comes over periodically and gets their cars. When you push the terminate button on the train, when you're finished picking up what cars and then leaving what cars, and then you push them all back in the tunnel, then when you push the terminate button, any loads that are in there swap, i.e. that lumber load would become an empty. Well, that doesn't happen in reality, but okay, you got the idea. Let's just say the load in the boxcar becomes empty. The carbon black becomes empty. The reefer becomes empty. Okay, you get the idea. We don't switch the visible loads on cars on this road. There's a lot of reasons why, mainly because if you start switching a load like that, it'll get destroyed. Okay, so it's like these things here. They're there. Okay, spools of wire. So whatever. So this is how it works. And once you got in your cars, you have to go back. Now, it could be that I can tell you that on this train, possibly that LCL that remember on this railroad, those 40-foot LCL, 40-foot roof walk boxcars are in captured service. They run between the depots. So technically, actually, this car should not end up on, and that's a good point. I'm going to have to go fix this. That car and that car should not be on the interchange. Because you can't interchange them. They're friction-bearing trucks, and they're supposed to be in captured service. Uh-oh. Wow. Gonna have to fix that. Well, anyway, technically, the way it's set up right now, that car could be coming back, and the local would have to put it maybe behind the station. All likelihood, most of the cars coming back will end up in the yard. But that's basically how that train works, other than my mistake. This is a long story. I have a modeler's license, and I can do anything I want to do. But we try to keep it close to some of the rules. 1972 was the end of roof walks and friction-bearing trucks in the interchange service between railroads. You could go back and research roof walks and walking on the roofs of cars on railroads, and it is an interesting story. The bottom line is there was a lot of dead people, thousands of dead people. So the railroad for a very long time was a very unsafe place to work. But that concludes the story about the interchange track. You can set up an interchange track almost anywhere. And it could be a case of it could be work from both ends. You could have a Santa Fe train coming on the railroad and going to that, have trackage rights, go to that siding and go off the railroad and swap cars out. I could think of that one. I could set that one up real quick. It's kind of would do it the same way I do my grain ethanol train. You just have to restrict everything down to where the train only goes to that one place. I could run it out of a track off my station back there and have it come up, go to that place and go back and just keep swapping, say 10 cars. That might be a good way to get rid of some space for cars too. Okay, see, I'm thinking as I go here. Okay, railroad's got a few too many cars on it right now. The one thing that Ron Boudreau said when I talked to him, the program is the more cars you get on the railroad, the less moves the railroad's going to make. So I'm kind of at that point where, you see some of this right here in Apex. We did something, kind of filled up all the spurs and stuff, and slowly but surely we're working it out. Real slow. Eventually the program will take care of moving these cars out of here. But it's a slow process when you got everything filled up. All right, so that's going to conclude the interchange track the way we have it set up here. Now, there's nothing to say that I couldn't have one of my manifest freight trains that come out of either Junction or over here at Golden in the back, when it went to Apex, also service that spur, service that interchange track. It's a spot on the railroad, and you can basically instruct you can instruct any train to stop and service it. The only thing I gets into here, if it was a manifest freight, it's a bad location to be having a manifest freight try to work that. The local guy, with a switcher coming over here, can hide. He's got a couple places he can get off and get out of the way on the main if we have a train coming through. So you have to think about those kind of things too. Model railroads, you have to compromise. It's a big compromise. That's what the whole thing is. All right, so that's it for the interchange track today.